Okay, then I think we can start. Um, Hello, everyone who is here. Welcome to the Twin Politics Ocean Seminar Series. My name is Felix Nütz. I'm doctoral researcher in the Twin Politics project at the University of Vienna. And I'm very happy to welcome today our guest, Tim Kiessling, who's going to be talking about on the topic of citizen science and to solve plastic pollution, children as agents of change. And Tim is an independent researcher, a marine biologist, and citizen science expert. We also used to work together in the Plastic Pirates project, which Tim was also part of developing. And we will hear more on that from him. And I will shortly, before giving over to Tim, introduce the project. So our project, Twin Politics, is an ERC project, is funded by the European Research Council and is running from 2024 to 2029. And we're an interdisciplinary research team to investigate the development of digital twins, which is novel digital technology as a geopolitical phenomenon that could permanently change the interface between science and politics. And in this Ocean seminar series, we're trying to create an exchange with experts from academia, policymaking, NGOs, and all kinds of other interested people with a focus on data, science, technology, and everything that has to do with the oceans. And the series is also an official United Nations Ocean Decade activity. And yeah, citizen science fits right into the scheme here. So without further ado, I will stop sharing and give over to Tim. And
Thank,
we will also have a Q&A afterwards, just to point that out.
thank you so much, Felix. Yes, and if you have any questions, maybe already you can post them in the chat or something. Yes, before I share my screen, I want to briefly ask everyone, maybe you can send an emoji just to get a rough impression of who you are. Who in here is involved in policy making in the widest sense, let's say, according to yourself, your own judgment? Maybe you can send a thumbs up or any other smiley you find, or reaction, I think it's called, here.
What do you mean by that, by policy making?
Just the very rough field. If you publish, for example, policy briefs, if you work with politicians, if you advise them, if you do something related to that. Okay, a couple people, I think. Someone sent a super thumbs up, and I'm not sure how many people were there or if it was only one. Okay, and another question. Who here is kind of involved in citizen science, according to yourself? Maybe as a participant, as a coordinator. Okay. All right. Okay, I think that's approximately the same amount of people. Great. Maybe that's something we can discuss later on because I was expecting that almost no one would be. So yes, very nice. I'm gonna share my presentation. Um, Felix, maybe you can tell me if you can see it.
Yeah, it's there.
Yes? Okay. So it's kind of a bit of a provocative question, of course, and the answer is probably a no. Just a small disclaimer, but I'm going to present some of the work I've been involved in, especially relating to doing citizen science research together with school children. I want to briefly present myself. Thanks, Felix, for the introduction. Here um, is a short introduction, but again, yes, I'm the person on the image on the left, the one holding up the data sheet, and these are some little citizen scientists that I've been collaborating with, in this case in Halifax in Canada. And I've been involved in this topic of investigating plastic pollution principally together with the school children since more than 10 years now. I've started to do this in Chile and have then worked in Germany on this topic. And I also self-describe myself often as a science communicator because I think that's a big part of doing citizen science with people. And yeah, what I really enjoy, or my goal is to enable other people to be part of the research process. And yeah, I mostly focus this effort on the school children and on school teachers. And on the bottom right, you see a project I've recently created with a couple friends and fellow researchers. Also, due to unstable funding from universities, we have kind of created our own little group, which we called Opaki, and we also want to open up research processes through science communication and citizen science. Okay, I really only want to briefly talk about plastic pollution because I think most of you have seen a lot of horrible pictures already and are aware of the impacts plastic pollution has on our ocean. Usually it's described as a transboundary issue that is present across all the planet and has a wide range of impacts, not only in the environment, but also, for example, on our human health. Here you see two pictures I took. Both are related to Chile. On the left, you see in a case where people do a barbecue next to litter, and they actually camp on top of a litter dump, basically, which I think nicely illustrates that for some people, it has pretty much become a normal part of the environment, this pollution. And on the right, you see a fish aggregation device, which is basically a sort of garbage trap dropped in the ocean by fishermen, and fish and other marine life congregate at this device, and then it attracts larger fish, and then eventually the fishermen come back for the device and catch the larger fish. And we found this during an expedition in the South Pacific that started from Chile. That's pretty much everything I want to tell you about plastic pollution, about the impacts or what I saw in the ocean, what I saw in the ocean or related to the ocean. And I also want to let you know that this issue is not getting any better soon. So today we have a plastic waste production of approximately 350 million tons per year. And this is projected to increase by a lot, like threefold until the year 2060. And here you can see what will likely happen with this litter. And on the bottom, you see the mismanaged portion of litter. That means that pretty much ends up in the environment. And you can see that this portion is not going to decrease until 2060, but is still increasing. Landfill basically just means you dig a hole and put litter in it, and it can be a sanitary hole where it's ensured that it's not polluting groundwater, but it also can be a not sanitary hole where basically it's just really a hole where you dig litter in and then you cover it eventually when it's filled. So the only proper managed garbage in this graph is pretty much recycling. Of course, it has also its own problems, but you see that all fractions are going to increase and that not suddenly all litter until 2060 will be appropriately managed and recycled. Incineration, usually industry calls it thermal recycling, but I decided to leave it, to leave the word incineration, and that basically means burning litter and getting energy from that in a controlled fashion. I also, because I work with the school children and education is a big part of my work, I also really want to emphasize who I think is responsible for the litter. So I brought you a little, some data from a recent study from past year, and it showed that, the companies we all know, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, and Nestle, were among the main polluters of litter items found during beach audits, which means people go to the beach, collect litter, and have a look who littered this or who to which company does the litter item belong. Yes, when I start to work with the school children, I usually ask them, what can we do or what can you do or who's responsible? And they were like, yes, we are in our household, we don't do this and that, and we could do more of that. And then nowadays, I always try to emphasize that it's not only on us, it's like the circumstances, and we don't have much of a choice, right? If we want to, if we buy certain articles, we cannot buy them in a sustainably fashion. And I think it's unfair to ask of the school children to solve this environmental problem. I mean, they have enough tasks on their hand, right? They are somehow responsible to solve a lot of crises they have been put into. Yeah, and I think it's really important to point a finger towards the real polluters. It's not us. It's mainly the big companies resisting change in this regard. Um, yes, also relating to this, I want to show you how the public has been involved with the litter issue. They are for sure concerned about plastic pollution. The references pop up at the end of the slide so you can see the related reference. This was a questionnaire in Germany where the public was especially concerned about the occurrence of microplastics, really small plastic fragments. The public is also generally in favor of really strong legislation to ban certain items or to put a fee on plastic items. The public has been involved in cleanup campaigns since decades, basically cleaning up the landscape. And they have also been involved in plastic pollution research, contributing quite significantly to the scientific knowledge we have about this issue. Yes, if you want to dive deeper, you can send me a message later or also look up these references. So I think there's a strong case to show here that the public is really involved in this plastic pollution issue, but somehow it is still not going to get solved in the upcoming years, at least if we don't do anything about it. And a tiny fraction of doing something about this is, yeah, involving, I think, the kids in being part of this research project. Um, yeah, and I want to show you, share with you the project I've been involved in. These are called the Plastic Pirates. The Plastic Pirates are mainly organized by two institutions, one which is called Kieler Forschungswerkstatt, or also Kiel Science Outreach Lab for the non-German speakers. This is a school lab based at Kiel University, and the Ecologic Institute, which is like a policy think tank in Berlin. And yeah, we have been coordinating this program involving school kids in plastic pollution research. Here you see some of the plastic pirates. And basically, there's a school class doing certain activities to investigate this problem at a river close to their school. On the left, you see them, one of them is holding a stick, and there's a circle established on the ground. So basically, you establish sampling circles or areas, and in this area, you look up, you collect garbage, and then you can already quantify an extent of plastic pollution. That is one method. Another, for example, is concerned with microplastics. We send out a net and they collect microplastic samples, which we analyze in the lab. And another is concerned, for example, on quantifying single-use plastic items, more specifically, which also relate to pieces of European Union legislations. Yeah, very brief overview. So this is something we have accomplished so far over the past 10 years. On the left, you see a map from a recent publication with the sampling spots. So you see quite good coverage in Germany along the major river systems that we have. We have involved more than 25,000 school children, collected more than 1,500 data sets of plastic pollution in Germany. It has also been really well received by the media. A lot of articles were published. I think also relates again to the involvement of the school kids. I mean, who doesn't like school kids doing something outside? And so the attention was there. And we have also published some articles about the data collected by the school children, and they have been quite well received also by other researchers citing these articles. Yes, and the project has also been extended to other countries in Europe. Um, and I want to emphasize that there exists also a sister project, which is called the Científicos de la Basura. They originated in Chile, even much before we implemented the project in Germany. And they've also extended their project along the Pacific coast in Latin America. And to date, I think there are now 23 countries involved, having done plastic pollution investigations or still doing them together with school children. So it has become quite a big network. This is pretty much how far we have come. And for the rest of the presentation, I want to give you an insight about new ideas that we have, how to really make or ideally make a change to solve plastic pollution. So yes, this is the current status where we are. So there's a citizen science method illustrated here at the left. On the top, we know that we are able to collect citizen science data that we can also use for peer review publications, so to produce scientific knowledge. That is how far we have come. What for me personally is the open question is, yeah, exactly. How do we contribute to really solving this problem? And for me, there are two main areas of question and two main pathways I want to look at. Let's say pathways to contribute to solve plastic pollution. One, I think, is through legislation. So to enable effective legislation to actually finally do something against this problem, and the other one is through local collaboration. I want to go a little bit into both of these pathways. So for the first one, let's assume or let's look at the perspective from solving it by enacting legislation. And the two main questions for me in this context would be, how can we really also use the citizen science data we collect, not only to produce knowledge, meaning to produce scientific articles, but actually inform policy directives, right? So we can look at existing directives in the European Union. Three of them are illustrated here, and look what they want to measure and how we can contribute data on how they work. For example, how effective are they in the environment to address plastic pollution? That is one question mark for me personally. How can we align our data collected with the policy documents enacted or with the legislation enacted by the European Union? And the second question is, how can we also use the citizen science approach to be on the forefront of investigating, for example, new litter hotspots? Because I mean, legislation usually takes a long time to be enacted and solves this and this issue in a systematic way, or at least has this aim to do that. But how can we, for example, include plastic pollution hotspots in there? We saw, for example, in our microplastic sampling, some nets had a lot of microplastic, and the citizen science approach was really a good approach to find out these hotspots, because the kids went where they basically went to school, they went to a river close by, but a team of researchers probably wouldn't have gone to the same river because maybe it was really small, not really attractive. Yeah, so I think that's the second question. How can we really harness the power of the citizen science approach to solve this plastic pollution problem? Or also, how can we give back to the citizen scientists? How can we involve them in a deeper phase of the scientific process? Yes, this is all a bit still in my head and visualized here a bit. So yeah, and still work in progress. So I'm happy to discuss this further. Here a little some questions, open questions relating to this two main questions. Of course, one main question here would be of data harmonization, right? How do we adapt, for example, the categories of litter items we investigate with the categories of litter items addressed by a piece of legislation in the European Union? And yeah, here would be some other things to consider for the second set of question. How can we really harness, for example, also the local knowledge of the school children, of the teachers, of their environment to be able to solve this issue? Here are some more references. And yes, for one piece of legislation, I want to go into a little bit more depth, because we actually have published a paper on that. We evaluated how the plastic pirates could contribute to the Water Framework Directive in the European Union. The Water Framework Directive, I'm going to just talk briefly about it, because you probably all know more about the legislative structure than I do, because I'm an environmental scientist basically. But it's a quite extensive piece of legislation and has the aim to ensure that all water bodies in the European Union have a good environmental status. And what that means is defined in detail in the directive. But interestingly, plastic pollution is not covered by this directive. For me, of course, this is curious because clearly you cannot just investigate chemical parameters or biodiversity. If an environment is full of plastic pollution, it cannot be considered to have a good environmental status. But it's also curious because a really related directive, the Marine Strategy Framework Directive, actually addresses plastic pollution. So in this study, we kind of analyzed a little bit how our plastic pirates data could inform the Water Framework Directive without considering all the practicalities. With whom we need to talk to enable this or to get a seat at the table, right? Leaving all this apart, just looking at some data. Here on the map, for example, you see plastic pirates sampling spot, and they are green and yellow. I hope you can see the difference there. It's a bit small. But all the yellow dots are within 1 kilometer of a Water Framework Directive monitoring site. That means that they pretty much already align quite well spatially. They have a really similar spatial coverage, these sampling sites, without anyone having actually managed to disoverlap. So just by coincidence, approximately a third, 32% of our sampling sites coincide roughly with Water Framework Directive monitoring sites. So I think this is a good first indicator that citizen science data can be really useful to inform policy directives. And pieces of legislation. Yeah, there are some other directives here. I don't think I want to go into a lot of detail and depth, but yeah, pretty much for me, the most interesting would be the Marine Strategy Framework Directive because it already addresses plastic pollution at the coastline, and in combination with the Water Framework Directive to investigate how this could be extended to cover aquatic environments and generally in the European Union, and to see for this two directives how citizen science data can play a role in the monitoring and also in developing new and novel methods to get the public involved in these directives. And another one, really interesting one, is the European Union Single-Use Plastic Directive, which addresses specifically single-use plastics, meaning plastics which are discarded after using them only once. And here, for example, the directive says that advancement on it will be monitored by analyzing sales data, waste collection data, and recycling rates. But interestingly, there are no environmental assessments actually proposed in this directive. Yes, and we have also published a paper on that. Looking at the categories this directive addresses and relating them to our plastic pirates data to see how effective this directive would be in actually reducing litter quantities in the environment based on what we saw in our plastic pirates data set, but also in other citizen science data sets. For example, the International Coastal Cleanup, they have a really, really huge beach data litter set. And we also linked it to the effectiveness of this directive. Yes, this was the first pathway I want to show you. The second pathway has less to do with legislation and more, I call it local collaboration. And for me, the two key questions here would be, how can school children be enabled to become a part of a team of decision makers in a really local context? And I have one example because I think it sounds a bit abstract. So last year I went to a school and we did a waste audit of the schoolyard, and we also tried to not only look at the waste as usual, but to also link it to the eating or food habits of the school children. So can we kind of deduce from the litter we find if the nutrition at school is kind of healthy or unhealthy? Do they eat a lot of packaged products? What does it mean for the school? What does it mean for the schoolyard? What does it mean for the school children themselves? That was a really experimental project, but it resulted that, yeah, we just started with basically an investigation. What we always did, we collected litter, classified it, but then we went one step further because we involved the school children in the dissemination process of this project. So they created little posters, small posters. One of them you can see here. They were quite young. They were fifth and sixth grade, so we prepared some data for them and shared their own data with them in the session. And they kind of, they came up with these posters, and then we invited the school principal for the poster presentation. And he was really enthusiastic about about this project. And he took all the posters to a meeting he had with the mayor the same day. They were discussing school-related stuff, not specific to plastic pollution, but it just happened to be the same day. And the mayor, she also really liked the engagement of the school kids, and she invited them afterwards for another meeting. And now they are discussing what they can do in their local context. For example, how they can maybe implement more sustainable practices in the school cafeteria. And also this also not doesn't only relate to plastics, but also to the food they eat every day. So this is what I mean by local collaborations and maybe also local decision making. The principal, of course, is the main local decision maker in this school, and he allowed the school children to become a part of at least discussing possible changes. So I think this is for me a really important second pathway, also to give more credit and acknowledgement of the contribution of the school children to empower them to not only collect rubbish basically and to classify waste, but also to talk about their results, their insights, and yeah, what they want to change in their environment. This image is just to conclude. Here you can see me. It must have been COVID because I'm wearing a mask, or yeah, maybe not the best COVID mask practices there, but it was around that time. And this was a day I went out with a school class. They participated in a special vacation program because it was summer holidays, and it was all children had a migrant background. So it was specifically a program for them. A lot of them could not travel because their parents just didn't have money to go on vacation. So it was a special educational program for them. And it was the best experience I ever had with the school kids out in the field. They were super interested. They asked me how I became a marine biologist, how I went to university, what I did, how good I was at school, and told them, yeah, don't worry, I was pretty bad at school. You can even become you can do something you like even with like bad grades. But what it really showed to me that the school children, they really want to get involved. If we give them an opportunity, they really want to take up that space and they want to participate. They also want to run around and joke and go into the water and play around, but they also really are open to collaborate with us other adults if we give them a chance and opportunity. And I think this was my key moment where I realized, wow, it is more on us to enable them, to give them a space. And I really want to contribute to this and work in this field. Yes, and that's pretty much everything. Just a small self-advertisement again, if you permit, Felix. We are a small team now starting with our own group, basically. So if you ever have the need to talk to someone who knows a bit about science, science communication, and how to open up research processes involving school children, of course, feel free to shoot me a message. Yeah, that's it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tim, for the interesting introduction and talk. And the idea of the seminar is, of course, to have an exchange. So I would invite everyone who wants to ask a question or make a comment to raise their hand or in any other way notify me that they would like to say something or just open the mic. And yeah, then Tim can say something about that. And maybe so that everyone has some time to order their thoughts, I can start with a question. So, I mean, you talked about the sort of like legislative policy impact that this research can have. And I mean, given that we both attended the last round of the plastics treaty negotiations, I think this question is kind of obvious for me. But like, how do you see the kind of possibilities that citizen science could have also for these multilateral processes? And how did you see this in reality? Was citizen science something that, yeah, you encountered there?
I didn't really encounter it, and I was looking for it, and we talked about it, Felix, right? I want to make it a small sub-project of mine to look at it during the global plastics negotiations in Geneva, where we also met last year, and probably most of you are aware that it was considered to be a failure because there wasn't a document at the end. There wasn't an agreement among the member states. I think it was a pretty intransparent, a really intransparent and close process. There were a few people, a few young people there through a coalition, and observers also from different groups. But I perceived that the public really didn't have a say in these negotiations. And I personally don't know how much sense it makes to continue these talks on in the United Nations level. I think personally, especially related to the citizen science aspect, it makes more sense to work nationally or even subnationally, like I tried to highlight with the second pathway of local collaborations. I think unfortunately they're so far away from the working reality in the educational system. Even for me, I've been involved in plastic pollution research since more than 10 years, and it was really difficult to get a spot there, to be able to be present there in Geneva. And what is yeah, I don't think there's really a pathway for other people to enter these negotiation spaces. They are really closed, in my opinion, yes. And I think personally, I want to go through more the local route or look at specific legislation in the European Union and see if we can enter there somehow in one of them at least.
Okay, then Aida, you can ask your question and maybe like give a short introduction before who you are, if you don't mind.
Thank you very much for this interesting presentation. Yeah, my name is Aida. I work at the American University of Armenia. Currently, I'm involved in the DESMAC 1 project, which is an EU-funded project dedicated to creating marine citizen science data network. So the question I am interested in, as you mentioned about the policy aspect of the plastic pirates, and I'm kind of a bit familiar with the project. So I'm wondering if you um, include or have the plans to include the data you collect with the help of the school children into the EMODNet or any process about this.
Yes, really specific and good question. Yes, and we have thought about it. So EMODNet is basically a principal European platform to collect marine-related data. I would say, to briefly describe it. Yeah, and it would be, of course, a good first step to be able to put our data into an official data repository. Our colleagues in Belgium have worked on that quite a bit, and so far our data has not made it into there because mainly because of data harmonization issues. They ask for different categories than we analyzed, uh, also relating to the sampling area, not also only the specific litter items and so on and so forth. But there was some engagement, and yes, unfortunately, it got stuck at this point for the moment. But I think it's really valuable to see this as a first stepping stone towards actually entering the negotiation spaces for legislation, to first say, oh, we were able to put it into an official data repository of the European Union. Yes, I think that's mostly a technical issue to identify the actors that can take decisions on what data to accept, on what categories to create, possibly new ones in the EMODNet platform, and to talk to them and to be able to harmonize our data. Some people say, yeah, I mean, there are established monitoring protocols for beach litter, for example. No, there's the OSPA convention with their own beach litter protocol. And sometimes we are questioned, why don't we just use the OSPA protocol to monitor marine litter or aquatic pollution with the school children? But when you look at it in detail, you quickly see that there are, like, I'm not sure at the moment, but 100 at least litter categories, maybe even 200. And this is just not feasible to do with the school children. So we always have to find a balance between what can we do in school, because it can also not be something so burdensome that nobody wants to participate anymore. If we tell the teacher, yeah, here's a list of 200 litter items, and say, yeah, okay, thank you, I'm going to sign up for another project. And to nevertheless collect reliable and robust scientific data. And now the added challenge, how do we harmonize it with the already hundreds of protocols that exist also around microplastic analysis, microplastic collection, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, thank you. That's very valuable. We are currently working on producing handbooks and checklists for data harmonization and
Okay.
protocols about physics, marine litter, and biodiversity. So, and I guess your project is part of the network. At least I see the name of your project in our surveys that we took. So I guess you will be updated if any of these protocols and metadata are published
Yes,
at
perfect.
that
Okay,
time.
great. Okay, yeah, that sounds great. Yes, I'm not aware about all the behind the scenes going on anymore. I'm not officially a part of the Plastic Pirates anymore, just now involved in the brainstorming new directions. So yes, but yeah, let's keep in touch if there are developments for sure. Great, thank you. Perfect.
Yeah, we also have a question in the chat from Barbara. I guess I will just read it. I think enabling children to act is so important to avoid that they get stuck in fear. Did you think about collaborating with AEFE, réseau of French schools worldwide?
I don't know them actually. So yes, please feel free to share some information. Yeah, but I agree. Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm not sure if I would describe it as fear, but I'm more in my opinion, like we try to like put a lot of responsibility on the school children to basically clean up the environment and do everything surrounding that. And yes, that's something I really want to address, to actually put them in the position to do something and not to just receive, um, yeah, our cry for help, basically.
Okay, then Alice.
Yeah, thank you very much for this interesting talk. I really appreciate this project and also the sharing of your findings and learnings in this group. So I would like to share experiences with my daughter. She is 4.5, and every morning it takes us 15 minutes to go to kindergarten. And there is actually a lot of plastic. I mean, it's funny because I live in a nice area in Vienna, but still there is a lot of garbage everywhere. And so there was a time a few weeks ago she really picked it up. So she really constantly said, "Mommy, there is something. We have to pick it up. We have to bring it somewhere." And then she asked me, "Why is that? Why are people doing that?" So she really questioned me every morning. Why are people doing that? So my question is, in all of this work with children, do you also provide explanations or narratives? So why is there the problem in the first place?
Hmm.
Because my impression is children are super curious, and they, although we might think they are just children, they do want to understand the causalities, and they want to,
Yes.
they make, I mean, I'm always very impressed, how they question things, sometimes even more to the point than some of my students in class, right? So how do you explain them the problems? Where's the problem? Because I mean, we
Yes.
are we of course can tell very different stories here. So
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Yes, I mean, the easy narrative is that there are people who are littering, right? And that's part of the truth, but for me, that's not enough anymore to just, and of course, if she's 4.5, and yeah, that would be much easier to understand than entering the whole multinational global corporations trashing our environment narrative. But what I try to tell them is that they are allowed um, to hold others responsible. It's not only their own responsibility, but they can say you have to do something. And with you, I mainly mean our decision makers and the global companies. That's a bit harder to sell as a simple narrative, but I really think we should take some burden off their shoulders. And maybe an easier narrative is because unfortunately there's not much of a choice. I try to live plastic free for like a year or something. I even punished myself, and when I bought something in plastic, some pasta or something, not really just ice cream with a plastic spoon. I don't do that, but just some stuff I needed. Then I put like 20 cent in a jar and donated it to Greenpeace at the end of the year. But I don't do that anymore because I'm not responsible either to solve this issue. And it's my responsibility to hold others responsible. That's kind of what I try to explain to the older school children. 4.5, we didn't involve a lot of such young people in the project. But yeah, your responsibility is to hold others responsible would be pretty much my message related to that. If that is an insight, I'm not sure.
Yeah. And maybe another question I have is, um, I mean, I think you really showed that that you also can collect data that is meaningful, but there are also other ways. So, for instance, the digital twin of the ocean of the European Commission, they have an application on plastics that shows like the flows and so on. So, how do you see the value of these kind of initiatives that try to map global plastic flows based on big quantitative data? And how do you see also avenues for complementing these different data initiatives?
Yes, I mean, the value obviously is there when we look at it from a research perspective, right? And summarizing information. Also, data harmonization is involved in these projects, all things we need to talk about. But what I'm more interested in, yeah, the second part of your question, how can we actually make it usable for other people, not just researchers, no? And with the plastic pilots, we supply a whole package of educational material to the school teachers, because if we don't supply this, they are usually not interested in participating. They need background information, they need work tasks, they need homeworks, they need experiments they can do in school to prepare the school children for the sampling and to motivate them. So if we can use these projects, these big projects, these visualizations, these models, and kind of adapt them to the school context, that would be hugely helpful. That's of course another whole other set of challenges. No, you have to simplify, still maintaining the same message or the key messages. And but yes, I mean that's of really large values for the teachers also. They always look for material they can use in class, and they want material that is that is really connected to research actually. And then they want, of course, something that they can just ideally take and put into their classroom. Every teacher is aware that they need to adapt it somehow to their classroom context. But if it's just a research project, that's far up there, and they cannot just take it and translate it. So that's something we are also really involved in looking at some initiatives and translating research into making it usable for the classroom, but always with the goal to actually enable a participation afterwards. Yes, and that's what we did with our methods actually in the beginning. I was mostly interested in litter data in the beginning, and just over my career basically had developed this mindset that we should include the school children and the school children opinion and their capacities and so on and so forth. And I collaborated closely with the school teacher to develop the methods. And I said something like, yeah, okay, let's investigate the microplastics. I think until 0.3 millimeters would be great. And she was like, okay, yeah, we can try that. And then we had our nets full of organic material, and no school kid ever wanted to sort through all this stuff basically through all the goo and slime. And yeah, that's how we simplified and found an arrangement basically. So I think that's a lot about that. As researchers, we have to let loose from considering everything, every tiny detail and aspect that we have in mind, and just focus on one key message and build something around there, or adapt something to reflect that. I think that's quite a hard task actually oftentimes. And I think the most effective task to be able to achieve this is really collaborate with the teachers. And for us, we were lucky enough that we had teachers directly in our team, in our institutions, that they were there every day. We could go there and ask them, and they would say, yeah, I'm not sure about that. And tomorrow I go to classroom, or in a week, and we can go out and test this. And it's a lot of failure in the beginning, like research related things also are, but it also opens up an avenue to have them participate a bit in designing these activities basically.
Yeah.
Maybe another last question. I assume you have heard about this new science policy panel that was established to support plastic-related or pollution-related negotiations. Have you heard about it?
Related to the Scientist Coalition, you mean?
No, it's a science policy platform that was established. They had their first meeting, but apparently they were not really. So it's like an IPCC for combating pollution.
Oh, yeah, okay. Uh-huh.
And I know that they had a big issue because they were not sure how to get data from the private companies, right? How to make sure that the data, the pollution data or plastic data that is often held by private companies is also included in the panel. So and then what they do is they say, oh, but yeah, but we can also include citizen science and we can also include knowledge from local communities and indigenous people. So how do you see this tension also and problem that you don't get the data you need because those that have it don't want to share it, but then let's use citizen science because this can make it different. So how to avoid that citizen science becomes a label
Yeah,
that avoids those that should also share the data because they are partly responsible.
yeah,
Hold them accountable as well.
yeah. I'm not personally sure if companies have a ton of valuable environmental plastic pollution data. I think about collection rates, recycling processes, all about that. Yes, for sure. But actually, on pollution of the environment, I would be surprised if they have as good as the databases that as the citizens have contributed, for example. Maybe in local pollution hotspots, yes, but uh, yes, and also I see a danger in using this citizen science sometimes as a bit of an excuse to just say, oh, we need citizen participation. There's this great approach, citizen science, let's label it. And yeah, there are already apps. Let's just say, yeah, use them and contribute data, and then we don't really worry if something ever happens with that data. Or to for example, I use the word monitoring in my presentation, and I usually try to avoid it a little bit because I think it's not responsibility of citizens to do monitoring related to European Union legislation. No, the European Union basically tells the member states, hey, it's your responsibility to monitor the stuff, and the member states should not be able to say, oh, yeah, our citizens will do it somehow. They are engaged and they will do it and they will come up with solutions. So, yes, there's some tension there. So, yeah, I'm not sure if that related to, yeah, I think it related to your question. But yeah, no, what I want to say as well, now there's some panel of experts, and now we say, oh, yeah, the citizens might be interested in collaborating. No, it's the other way around. The citizens have been interested since forever. I mean, I found a citizens guide to plastic pollution published, I think, in the 70s. I have it at home and I bought it on eBay because I was really curious what that is. There's all this stuff out there since 50 years, 60 years sometimes. Citizens have been interested, and now some experts say, oh, yeah, they might be interested. So I think there's also it has to do something a lot with terminology and labeling. When I go out with the school children, and I always tell them, hey, doing research is not something reserved for scientists. And actually, being a scientist is a label. It's not a qualification. To hold a doctoral degree is a qualification, yes, or to be a professor, yes. But to be a scientist, if you employ scientific method, if you collect data, I think you're allowed to call yourself a scientist and to identify as a scientist and to enable yourself to be able to do this, right? And to also change what you have in mind, what a scientist does or how they contribute to society. I think that's a really important aspect for citizen science as well, to open up these and to also let go of power, no, of people, of established researchers, let's call them, to let go of their power and tell them other people have the right to contribute in this area. Not really a specific answer, I think, but just my thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. I also wanted to ask something else, or maybe also share something else, because, like I said in the beginning, I was also part of the Plastic Pirates project for a while. And 2 years ago, we did these focus groups with school classes so that they kind of did this data collection. They went to the local beach, and then afterwards we asked them question in the classroom about what they did and about plastic pollution more generally. And it just really stuck with me that the school kids were really kind of repeating the narratives that maybe we as researchers kind of would disapprove of, because they were really saying like, yeah, it's the people who litter who are kind of at fault. And then they're also seeing the activity more as like kind of a beach cleanup than as a research activity. And also these beach cleanups are like sort of solutions to plastic pollution that are favored by big companies because it brings the responsibility down to the citizens instead of yeah, applying pressure on the companies that are producing single-use plastics. So my question to you would be, A, whether you think this sort of awareness in school kids is similar across classes, or if there are also some who are more aware of like structural factors, and yeah, also what then the project, the Plastic Parrot project, can maybe help with that awareness.
Yeah, I think it depends a lot of the framing. When I go out with a school class, I really try to tell them that we are doing research here, that after our investigation, they will be the local experts about plastic pollution in their vicinity. It's likely that no one ever did a systematic study of pollution where they went, right? But if you ask them, of course, they repeat narratives and solutions that are present in society and largely pushed by industry. No, of course, for industry, it's always easiest to say, no, yeah, we produce these products and we already redesigned them for recyclability, but now it's the consumer's decision what to do with it in the end. And yeah, we do education campaigns. So of course they would repeat that. And if you ask a school kid, do you actually believe we did research here? They will be like, I cannot imagine, because that's up for people who are super intelligent, who did a lot of study, who are weird scientists in the lab coat, because we never, which school kid has actually contributed to research? Yeah, quite some, but has this been labeled accordingly? I don't think so. And that's a lot on us, I think, and a lot of our communication as researchers with the people we engage in, and also in science communication, and especially in citizen science, I would say. Um, yeah.
I don't know if there's enough time, but I have a question, if I may.
Yeah, please.
Sweet. My name is Chloe Taillondier. I'm a PhD researcher at the Open University in the Netherlands, and I'm following the global plastics treaty negotiations. And I was wondering, because you highlighted in your presentation that involving the kids got quite a lot of attention from the news. But I was wondering if you also saw any changes at the local level, maybe from the municipality, if they would engage more with the schools, trying to develop projects with the schools or other institutions around, because you also described the kids as agents of change. So I was wondering if your framing of them being agents of change and the news outlets have been basically having an impact also at more local level in a systematic way. Have you observed any change like this?
Yeah, not in a systematic way. That's where we want to go now. And I think this requires the framework I presented to really put thought into how can we enable that, who to get on board. Maybe there's little different levels of to get the school children heard, basically. No, maybe first through the school, through disseminating at school, then scaling up to municipality levels. But we for sure have basically case studies of these things having happened. So quite some teachers or school children even contacted us and just told us, oh, we did an outreach event at school. Basically the most simple form of engagement after, right? To say, okay, we did this investigation, we're going to present it. And some also ask us to send them the sampling material again because they were interested in studying the river or the lake again. Some did involve this project into their science competition project we have here ongoing in Germany. and they made this method part of their project, which they submitted to the science competitions. Things like that for sure happened, but they are anecdotal, and now we really want to scale it to be able to enable them systematically. In the citizen science world, there's a lot of discussion around the word co-creation, meaning to involve people to actually contribute intellectually to a process, I would say. And the projects who just collect data are a bit put into this corner that they don't do co-creation. And strictly speaking, the Plastic Pirates are largely a project collecting data for now, and we want to scale more towards co-creation. This doesn't necessarily mean, I think, to get together with thousands of school children to develop a research question, because why should I do that if we already have a research question in mind that we don't need to repeat this exercise? But I think it mainly relates to how can we listen to them, what they actually want to do after and before the participation, or how they can also pilot ideas within their vicinity to develop other methods, for example. Ideally, we would have pilot schools where we just try out different methods and develop them together with the school children, and to roll out these big projects then afterwards to more schools. Also, some teachers don't want co-creation. I mean, they have very limited time. They just sometimes want a nice project and be done with it. So I think the data collection projects they have, that they should exist and they have the justification. But I think at a scale where the Plastic Pirates operate in multiple countries, and we are in a position now to actually, with all this support, to try to open these spaces, we really need to take this co-creation aspect seriously and try to systematically put the school children in a position to become agents of change. The title was a bit work in progress title. This will be hopefully the development phase in the upcoming 2 years to really get there. Or try to get there at least, make a good effort.
Thank you so much. And I have a follow-up question on that. So you were also mentioning that the kids were going to places where basically no scientist would go to collect data because it's not, it's not mainstream. It's like next to their school or wherever they're going. How would you say people value this type of data, both from a scientific perspective, but also maybe at policy level? And would you say the way the data is perceived is actually a barrier maybe into scaling this thing up a bit?
I think just relating to the data, I'm not sure, really sure about the policy aspect, but I think it's mainly dependent on the translation from researchers. If the researchers take the data seriously, I feel that policymakers who are open to that would also. They would not judge if it's school children based data. If the scientists already have said that's okay. But speaking about the scientists in the beginning, when publishing our first article, we had some backlash from some researchers saying, oh, wow, they are school children, a nice engagement activity, nice outreach, cool to get them involved. But I mean, they haven't even finished their education yet. I'm pretty convinced that they can count from 1 to 10, but how can you be sure that they can do scientific investigations? Investigation, and actually we are not there with the kids most of the times. No, you saw on the map there are like a lot of sampling spots, and we go out with some classes mainly also to pilot things, to get their opinion and feedback, but we are not there for each and individual school class. In communication, yes, we communicate with the teacher and so on and so forth, but in the actual event, no, not. So we put a lot of effort into data quality mechanisms, and we also published a paper on that, what we have enabled and so on and so forth. Mainly relates to documenting their findings with photos and so on. If you're really interested in that, I can also send the paper. But mainly, that's an issue. And I want to say something for the first part of your questions, but I think I kind of forgot. Not sure. Did that answer some parts of your question? Sorry.
It did, yes, thank you.
Okay.
Are there any further questions? I guess not. It's also 6 p.m., so maybe a good time to close. I will just before saying goodbye share the information on the next steps in the Ocean Seminar series. So first of all, you can find our previous ocean seminars on the YouTube channel of the Environmental Politics Research Group. The link is in the presentation, where also this seminar will be uploaded. And we're also currently doing an ocean data survey. You here have the QR code, which you can scan to participate. And here we want to get information from people about potential future uses, applications, and challenges of digital technologies in negotiations and policy making. Furthermore, for whoever is in Vienna, there is this event on the 16th of June at 6 p.m. in Naturhistorisches Museum, where Alice Vadreau, our principal investigator, is gonna talk. And that's it. I thank everyone very much, especially Tim, for this very interesting talk and exchange. And wish you a very pleasant Wednesday evening. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Felix,
you.
for moderating, and Tim for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye bye.